without further ado, let's just get right into it. You've heard my introduction for the past two lessons. We're good friends by now, and I'm looking forward to showing you today's lesson. First off, why is cultural diversity important? I just want you to imagine a world where everyone is the same, speaking the same language, sharing the same beliefs, and observing the identical customs. It would be dull and unrealistic compared to this vibrant world that we live in today. Cultural diversity infuses vibrancy and authenticity into your world, making it more engaging and appealing to a wide range of readers. Diversity is like the salt and pepper to your soup. You can still have characters, a good story, a good setting, all those veggies in that soup. But without that seasoning, without that diversity in there, you won't have it. And I'm not talking about cultural diversity as an inclusion of this world. I'm talking about elves, orcs, dwarves, all in the same world, instead of just having elves, right? Or different clans of elves that each have their own traditions and such. Those are the important aspects of world building, not having diverse characters from our world in your fantasy world. That wouldn't actually even make much sense. So, as long as your world has different cultures, different traditions, and different ideas between different people, you're going to do just fine. But this is a super long lesson, so let's just carry on and cover in more detail all the different aspects to cultural diversity. Cultures, languages, customs, and traditions are the cornerstones of any society. They shape the identity and values of a community. To craft an immersive world, it's essential to understand these elements. First, it's cultures. Culture encompasses the shared beliefs, values, behaviors, and social practices of a group of people. Perhaps your character might mention how they haven't eaten in days. Now, to us, that would be crazy. But what if his culture values fasting? What if he's doing his monthly fast where he doesn't eat for a week? If we know that his culture is like that, we would value that. We'd find it interesting. We wouldn't just be like, "Oh my word, you're gonna die. You haven't had any food for so long. Here, eat up." We would respect that. We take intrigue into that. To understand the beauty of all these different cultures, I'll just give some real world examples real quick. The Japanese culture is known for its emphasis on respect and honor. The samurai, before losing a battle, if they knew that they were on the losing side, they would actually kill themselves before surrendering because they thought it was unhonorable to live with the enemy. To us, not knowing that culture, it would seem very strange for a samurai to just up and kill himself at the end of the battle. Like, no big deal, you lost. But no, to him, that was everything. That was his honor. That was the Japanese culture speaking through him. Your characters will have those cultures that you create speaking through them as well. And then the Maasai people of East Africa, hopefully I'm pronouncing that well, they have distinctive clothing and jewelry traditions. All these cultures that I speak of right now are just a glimpse of the richness of the world's cultures. So if you have the time during the day, just look up a couple of different cultures today. Maybe a European one, maybe an Asian one, Native American, Arctic. Arctic doesn't have any culture, except if you consider Greenland and that area right there, maybe like North Canada. But just take a little bit of time to experience the other cultures of different countries and different people. And I promise you that that inspiration will overflow into your own writing, into your own world. The next element is the language, the key to the culture. They're more than just words. They are keys to understanding a culture. They reflect historical legacies, societal structures, and worldviews. In your world, languages can unlock the gates to different cultural realms. Now, am I saying that you have to create an entire language? No. But I do remember that in the books that I've written, I always include some sort of language here and there, some word that's made up to us, but to our characters, it means a lot. For example, I wrote a story about this baby bear that was kidnapped by like this witch coven, right? It's a much bigger story than just that, but this was like a little episode in that novel. When our heroes finally rescued that baby bear, they were trying to figure out what to call him. So they decided on Damble. What's Damble, right? That's a weird name. But really it means vengeance in the language of those witches. So really it was kind of like an ironic twist to everything. But it really only meant something to the characters and later the readers when they found out that Damble meant vengeance. in that fantasy language. Of course, you could just create an entire language like Tolkien or something like that. Feel free to do that, but just know that I'm not really telling you that you should. I'm just saying that if you add a little bit of language for flavor, right? Like as we were talking about, the culture is the salt and pepper. The language can be some other spices that you throw on the soup. And while we stay on the topic of languages, we have to also realize that our world has many different languages, but some languages are in the same family. So, for example, French, English, and Spanish are all Latin languages, while, say, Russian and Bulgarian or Cyrillic, they have their own alphabet. They're in their own family. Then there's also Persian, which I believe is also different, and Hebrew, which is also very different. And then you go over to Japan and China. They have completely different languages as well, but some are in families. Like Japan has a couple different languages in their core language. You just have to remember that languages aren't monolithic. They'll mean different things to different people. They come in families, dialects, and variations based on regions. In a multicultural society, characters can communicate in different languages, each with its own unique nuances. This diversity can lead to intriguing dialogues and cross-cultural interactions. Now, would I recommend writing an entire story in a specific language? Your readers wouldn't be able to understand it, so no, I don't recommend that. But if you take different context words, it's going to mean different things to different people. What if in one kingdom a dog is like better than a human, right? Like they're just like so awesome, right? So like if you want to compliment someone, you're just like you're a dog, like that's awesome. But then in a different kingdom, a dog is like lower than a cat. So obviously, if that cat kingdom or like the people who don't like the dogs is complimented by that kingdom that does like dogs, they're going to take it as an insult, and then conflict will follow. So just keep that in mind, and I think that you'll be able to find some very interesting opportunities to have some fun with these different languages. Next is customs and rituals. This includes the way people greet each other, celebrate holidays, and observe rituals. They are everyday expressions of culture, adding authenticity and depth to your world. Now, our custom in the US is to greet people with, like, hey, how are you doing? Maybe like a nice handshake or a hug. While say in France, I'm not sure if they do it anymore, but it used to be like, kisses on the cheeks or something like that. Those are different customs. And then there's rituals. All right, so say in Catholicism, there's like that sacrament. That's like a ritual that that culture follows. The way that we tip our waiters, right? That's a custom. That's part of our culture. But some cultures might think that that's crazy. They're already getting paid. Why would you give them more, right? So all these different aspects, all these different customs are formed by the culture. And then finally, there's traditions, which is probably the most important part of a culture. They're the threads that weave through generations, connecting a culture's past to its present. These long-standing practices preserve a society's cultural identity and give your world a sense of history and continuity. Without tradition, I don't even know where we would be. Imagine, I mean, obviously some of you probably don't, but imagine not celebrating Christmas or Thanksgiving in the USA. Our founding fathers celebrated these same things. Actually, not really. Thanksgiving came out with Abraham Lincoln, I believe. But these traditions, like 4th of July, imagine if somehow the USA just stopped celebrating the 4th of July. That would have a detrimental impact. That would have a detrimental impact to US patriotism. Our identity as a country would fall significantly because we forgot those traditions that were put in place hundreds of years ago. It's the same way for your very own world. Your world should have traditions that extend as far back as anyone can remember. This way, your reader will know that you didn't just make up this world to go along with the characters, right? The world didn't just come into play as soon as the characters were invented. No, this world has always existed. These characters are taking part of that. They're taking part of that experience. And through them, your readers are also experiencing this ancient world. Now, cultural diversity can also incredibly enrich the setting. It's the spice that flavors your world, making it more interesting and multifaceted. Different cultures provide opportunities for unique plot lines, character development, and societal dynamics. Now, let's just say that there is a culture that is totally okay with cannibalism, right? It's like on the menu at the local restaurant. It just happens sometimes, right? They might be thieves or they might just be like, yo, I'm tired of this life. I want to go get eaten.
Obviously, very stupid. It's a terrible example. I apologize, but I think that you understand what I'm going with. Say if you have like this family, they're just chilling. The one day the chef's just like, yo, we need like, more food. This depressed son might volunteer himself without the family knowing. And then the family has to go to the restaurant and like break him out. That's like a crazy plot line that I have never really seen before. I'm not even sure if anyone would like read it because it's just so absurd. But what I'm trying to get at is that these different cultures can give the opportunity for crazy plot lines that you never thought possible. Same with character development. Like this dude who like literally was going to sacrifice himself must have had some pretty crazy stuff going on. So when he finds out that his family cares that much about him to go and rescue him from like the cages of the chef, I think it's going to develop him quite a bit. And of course, cultural diversity isn't limited to aesthetics. It influences your world geography, politics, economics, and power structures. It shapes how societies interact and can be a driving force behind conflicts and alliances. Now, say if they speak the same language, like these two kingdoms speak the same language, they're going to obviously have an easier time keeping peace with each other because they can understand where they're coming from better. But if they have to go between like translators, some of the context might be lost, or really it's going to make communication impossible. But if both kingdoms know the same language, they already have that like cultural connection, right? I mean, that's a big thing as to why Russia invaded Ukraine, controversial topic. But the reason why they felt like they had some sort of claim to Ukraine was because many Eastern Ukrainians speak Russian. So they have that cultural connection that they couldn't really let go of. So just keep that in mind whenever you're dealing with alliances or politics. The cultures which impact the worldview of your characters will also therefore impact the events that the characters have an impact on. It's just like a constant, never ending layer to cakes, right? At the base, you have culture, and then you have character, and then you have politics, and then the politics influences the culture, and that influences the character. So all these different things influence everybody in some way and somehow. Now, also, real quick, a good benefit to having multiple cultures is that it's going to appeal to multiple cultures in the real world. Say if you have a sort of Southeast Asian inspired culture for these elves, is going to appeal to that culture in the real world. But at the same time, if you have some orcs that resemble the Arabians, and perhaps dwarves that resemble the French, it's going to appeal to those cultures because they're going to be like, oh, I remember like that reminds me of my own culture. That reminds me of my own traditions, my own language, my own customs. All these different things are going to add to your readability for other cultures. So keep that in mind, and you'll probably be able to grow your readership if you make small tweaks to how cultures come across. Some people in real life might think, hey, this reminds me of myself. And that's always a fun thing to experience when you think to yourself that the character that you're reading is kind of like you. Now, obviously, as I was saying with the birthday cake, right, you have culture, characters, politics, culture, characters, politics. Every culture, it's characters. Creating diverse and relatable characters is the heart of your story. When you create like culturally diverse characters, you not only reflect the real world, but also introduce unique perspectives and challenges that add depth and relatability to your narrative. This could be an elf teaming up with a dwarf, right? Lord of the Rings, I know. But you can also just think of like your own world. Maybe there's shark people and whale people, sworn enemies. But then these two kids kind of are just like playing in the ocean one day and they, meet each other, right? They shouldn't have met each other, but they did. And they had like this awesome friendship. And then like these two, the shark and the whale, they go off and have adventures. And each of them brings their culture with them. The whale might be saying to the shark, like, bro, like you don't have to like, put so much blood everywhere. And then the shark can just be like, oh, sorry, I thought that was, polite. I have to spread the blood everywhere so, you can get smell too. So like for the sharks, obviously that's totally polite. They're sharing the smell of that delicious seafood. But for the whale, he's just like, bro, like that's nasty, right? So it's like those different cultural diversities that add interest to your story. Now, as I was saying a little bit before, feel free to research some different cultures in the real world. Before you embark on world building, you should probably conduct thorough research. Dive into books, documentaries, and seek insights from cultural experts if you want. This research is your bridge to authenticity and respect. Now, what do I mean by authenticity? I mean that if you can truly know the fundamentals of a culture in the real world and what makes that culture still like live today, it didn't die in the ages past, right? It's still thriving. And that means that you'll be able to perfectly create your very own culture following the framework that this old culture set. This culture obviously did something right. So if you can research and understand what it was that they did right, you can do the same thing in your very own writing. There's so much to be learned from history, and I mean, I love history. It's really just the bridge to the future, the past, and to the present.
And especially for a writer, even if you're like a fantasy writer like myself, it's just an endless trove of treasure. There's just so much inspiration. I don't mean to go into that little, rant right there, but I highly encourage you to dive into history before creating your own world. Okay, so I just have this like really quick slide on developing languages, right? Crafting a linguistic diversity. Now, if you want, here at Writers Academy, we do really go by what our students want. So if you want a full course or like a full lesson on how to make your own language, let's just, hear from you and I might make one. But I just want to cover this real quick that languages can be a fascinating part of cultural diversity, right? You can construct your own language. These can be called the conlangs, which really stands for constructed language. They reflect the distinctiveness of your world's cultures. These languages add layers to your authenticity and richness to your world. So again, if you want to find out more about creating your own language, let's just hear it in the chat. I'm always in the chats answering your questions. So if you want to give me ideas for the next lesson, I already have them planned. But if you want another lesson on world building, shoot me a message in the chats or DM me, and we'll get right on that because that's what we do here at Writers Academy. And then you have to showcase the customs and traditions. Now, having traditions and customs in the back of your mind, right, and how they impact your character is important, but it is also extremely important to show that to your readers. You have to show like how these traditions and customs are impacting their choices.
They aren't just a window dressing. They're integral to your world's plot, character development, and world building.
By weaving these elements into your narrative, you create a world that feels vibrant, lived in, and culturally rich. You could say have a festival, the festival of honey, right? Say if it's a kingdom of bears. They love honey, obviously, so you could have your characters go to the festival of honey and, continue the story in that setting. That tradition combined with developing the story and characters even more adds so much richness to the world. And then also, it's important to highlight the significance of cultural practices in your world. You can talk about them. You can celebrate these traditions, like that festival of honey. But if your readers don't know why these traditions are even important, then what's the point? Like, take the 4th of July, for example, in the US. If we never fought the British for independence, would we really care about the 4th of July? No. Would people reading about the US celebrating the 4th of July care if nothing really happened on that day? No. So that's why it's important to highlight the reason why your culture celebrates these practices. Rituals, celebrations, and customs can also provide insights into your world's societies, showcasing their values, histories, and sense of identity. And that brings us to our conclusion. Cultural diversity is a potent tool in world building. It breathes life into your fictional world, making it relatable, engaging, and inclusive. Use this knowledge as your compass in the exciting journey of world building, crafting unique, culturally rich settings that captivate the imagination of your readers. Embrace diversity and celebrate the beauty of the real world cultures that inspire your creations. Once again, thank you for watching this lesson. Once again, thank you for watching this lesson here at Writers Academy. If you have any feedback, please let me know in the feedback chat. If you have any ideas, also let me know. I really enjoy making these lessons for you, and I think that you'll be taking a lot of value from them. Of course, I do have another lesson coming up soon, so look forward to that. And also be sure to check out the other free courses. We also have premium memberships coming up, which are going to dive into exactly how to write a short story, novella, poetry like haiku and sonnets, elegies, letter writing, journaling, so many different things, and a book publishing step-by-step tutorial taught by me. So all those things are coming very soon. Oh, I forgot to mention children's book publishing using AI art. That's going to be a fun one too. So enjoy the other courses, be ready for my next lesson, and get excited for the premium courses. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.